Do you believe intelligence can actually be changed just by slowing down the way you read? We do, and science backs it up. Research shows that when we resist the urge to skim and instead read with focus and intention, our brains build stronger memory pathways, sharpen attention, and even improve decision-making skills. In a world that glorifies speed, slow reading becomes a powerful act of transformation. Over the next 15 minutes, we'll take you inside the science of how it works, why it matters, and the simple habits you can adopt today to start thinking smarter and deeper. When we talk about slow reading, we don't mean dragging your eyes over every sentence so slowly that the book feels like a chore. What we mean is reading with intention, with focus, and with space to actually absorb what you're taking in. Think about the difference between inhaling fast food on the go and sitting down to a home-cooked meal. One fills you quickly but leaves little memory or satisfaction, while the other gives you time to taste, reflect, and enjoy. That's exactly what slow reading does for your brain. Slow reading is immersive. Instead of racing to the last page or skimming paragraphs for keywords, you let yourself pause, form a mental image, ask a question, or connect what you're reading to something you've experienced. It's the difference between reading to finish and reading to understand. For example, imagine skimming a novel just to know what happens. You'll remember the plot for a week, maybe. But if you slow down and let yourself feel the character's emotions, notice the author's language, and think about the choices being made, that story stays with you for years. In everyday life, most of us are conditioned to read quickly. News headlines, social feeds, text messages. It feels efficient, but it doesn't build lasting knowledge. Slow reading flips that script. It allows your brain to dig deeper, to create stronger memory pathways, and to draw connections you might otherwise miss. It's not about being slower for the sake of it. It's about giving your mind the chance to actually work with what you're reading, instead of just brushing past it. When we look at what happens inside the brain of a deep reader, the science is fascinating. Reading is not a natural skill like walking or talking. It's something we have to train our brains to do. Neuroscientists like Marianne Wolf at UCLA describe how slow, immersive reading activates a reading circuit in the brain that links multiple regions: the visual cortex to recognize words, language areas to process meaning, and crucially, the frontal lobes that handle memory, empathy, and problem solving. When you skim quickly, your brain mostly stays in the surface layers of recognition. You recognize words, you get the gist, but you don't give enough time for those words to trigger deeper networks. Slow reading, by contrast, keeps the language alive long enough to connect with emotions, past experiences, and higher reasoning. That's why you might find yourself not just remembering a line from a book, but also connecting it to a decision you need to make in your own life. Think of it like exercise. A quick jog might get your heart rate up, but strength training builds new muscle. Slow reading is the mental equivalent of strength training. The longer you hold ideas in your attention, the more your brain wires them into memory and links them with existing knowledge. Over time, this practice strengthens your capacity for focus, reflection, and even creativity. There's also evidence from brain imaging studies showing that deep readers develop denser neural connections, particularly in areas tied to empathy and perspective taking. In other words, the act of slowing down doesn't just help you understand the book better, it can make you better at understanding people. There's a growing body of scientific evidence showing that reading doesn't just inform you, it actually changes your brain. One of the most cited studies came from Emory University, where researchers scanned the brains of participants before and after they read a novel. What they found was striking. After just a few evenings of immersive reading, participants showed heightened connectivity in the left temporal cortex, an area tied to language and meaning,
and in the central sulcus, which is linked to perspective and even sensory imagination. In other words, their brains were lighting up as if they were living parts of the story. Other research has reinforced this. A study published in Brain Connectivity showed that deep reading builds what neuroscientists call long-term functional changes. It's not just that you're paying attention in the moment. Reading deeply strengthens the neural pathways that help you focus, remember details, and make more complex associations in everyday life. This is why avid readers often show stronger analytical thinking and better memory recall.
There's also compelling evidence about empathy. Experiments at the New School for Social Research found that people who read literary fiction scored higher on tests of understanding other people's thoughts and feelings. That suggests that slow, reflective reading doesn't just train your memory and reasoning, it can literally expand your emotional intelligence. All of this points to one clear conclusion. Every time you read slowly and deeply, you're not just consuming information, you're reshaping your brain, reinforcing its capacity for focus, comprehension, and empathy. It's like brain plasticity in action. And it shows how something as simple as how you read can alter the way you think and engage with the world. Even though many of us are trained to read fast, our brains have real limits when it comes to comprehension. Eye tracking studies show that reading involves a series of saccades and fixations, tiny jumps and pauses that allow your brain to decode words and attach meaning. When you push yourself to read too quickly, you shorten those fixations and skip over subtle details, which reduces comprehension. It's not just about missing words, it's about the connections your brain makes. Understanding complex ideas requires time to integrate new information with what you already know. Rapid reading often leaves the brain processing fragments rather than full concepts, making it harder to remember, reflect, or apply what you've read. Even experts experience this trade-off. People who are highly experienced in a subject can read faster while maintaining understanding, but for unfamiliar material, slowing down is essential. It allows the brain to engage fully with new vocabulary, complex sentence structures, and nuanced arguments. Think about it like listening to a lecture. If the speaker talks too fast, you might catch a few words here and there, but the main ideas don't stick. Slow reading gives your mind the same kind of space, time to pause, process, and internalize. It's not about inefficiency, it's about learning more effectively and building stronger neural pathways. Slow reading doesn't just improve comprehension in the moment, it also has lasting benefits for your brain over time. Longitudinal studies show that adults who engage regularly in immersive reading tend to have better memory retention, stronger problem-solving skills, and even a lower risk of cognitive decline as they age. In other words, reading slowly is not just a learning tool, it's a protective habit for your long-term cognitive health. Researchers suggest that the act of sustained, focused reading strengthens the neural networks involved in attention, memory, and reasoning. Each time you pause to reflect, make connections, or imagine a scene vividly, you're exercising circuits that might otherwise weaken in a fast-paced, distracted life. Over months and years, these repeated mental workouts can improve your capacity to concentrate, analyze complex ideas, and retain knowledge, benefits that extend far beyond the page. Think of it like physical exercise. Skimming a book is like a quick walk. It gets some activity, but barely challenges your muscles. Slow reading, on the other hand, is more like strength training or yoga for your mind. It builds resilience, flexibility, and endurance that carry over into everyday thinking, decision-making, and problem-solving. Slow reading strengthens your mind in several concrete and measurable ways. First, it improves comprehension. By taking the time to process each sentence, reflect on its meaning, and connect it to prior knowledge, you remember far more than when you skim. These richer mental representations allow you to recall details, themes, and ideas with greater accuracy.
Second, it boosts critical thinking. When you slow down, you naturally evaluate arguments, notice assumptions, and compare different viewpoints. This active engagement forces your brain to analyze, question, and synthesize information rather than passively absorbing it. Over time, these habits make you a sharper, more discerning thinker in both reading and real-world decision-making. Third, slow reading enhances empathy and social understanding. Immersing yourself in well-developed characters or complex narratives allows you to simulate other people's perspectives and emotions. Cognitive studies show that readers who engage with literary fiction are better at predicting others' thoughts and feelings, which translates into improved emotional intelligence in everyday interactions. Finally, slow reading reinforces durable memory. Unlike speed reading or skimming, where ideas often fade quickly, deliberate reading encourages the brain to integrate new information into existing knowledge networks. This means the lessons you learn stay with you longer and can be applied in practical contexts, whether it's a problem at work, a personal decision, or understanding a complex topic. While slow reading has tremendous benefits, speed reading and skimming do have their place. Not every situation requires deep, immersive focus. When you're scanning emails, looking for a specific fact, or reviewing familiar material, reading quickly can save time and still give you the information you need. The key is aligning your reading strategy with your goal. For example, if your goal is understanding a complex concept or analyzing a challenging text, slowing down allows your brain to process, reflect, and integrate new ideas. On the other hand, if you're gathering data, checking news updates, or catching up on routine material, a faster pace is often more efficient. Studies show that comprehension and retention are heavily influenced by purpose. Readers adjust naturally when they know whether the priority is speed or understanding. Think of it like driving. Sometimes you need to accelerate to reach your destination quickly, but other times slowing down gives you better control and lets you navigate curves safely. In reading, the trick is knowing when to speed up and when to slow down, so you get the right balance of efficiency and depth. Slowing down while reading enhances thinking because it gives your brain the time and space to process information deeply. When you read deliberately, each word and sentence has a chance to activate multiple cognitive pathways simultaneously. Your visual cortex decodes the text, language centers extract meaning, and higher order areas in the prefrontal cortex engage in reflection, analysis, and synthesis. This synchronized activity strengthens the neural networks that support memory, comprehension, and reasoning. Another key mechanism is mental simulation. Slow reading allows your mind to visualize scenes, imagine characters' emotions, and mentally rehearse scenarios. This immersive process makes the material more memorable and encourages creative problem solving because your brain is actively integrating new information with existing knowledge rather than just passing it along passively. In short, slow reading is like giving your mind the time to exercise, building stronger, more flexible thinking skills that extend far beyond the book. In today's world, speed is king. We scroll through social media feeds, skim news headlines, and binge information at a pace our brains were never designed to handle. This constant rush fragments attention, reduces comprehension, and makes deep thinking increasingly rare. Slow reading stands in stark contrast. It's a deliberate, almost rebellious act in a culture obsessed with speed.
From a social perspective, slowing down allows us to engage more meaningfully with ideas, people, and our own thoughts. When we take time to process what we read, we cultivate empathy, patience, and perspective, all of which are essential for navigating complex social and professional environments. Culturally, slow reading helps preserve literary traditions and the appreciation of nuanced storytelling. which are often lost when texts are consumed in bite-sized, rapid-fire doses. Moreover, in an era where misinformation spreads rapidly, slow reading equips us with the cognitive tools to evaluate claims critically, distinguish fact from opinion, and make informed decisions. It's not just about personal growth, it's a skill that strengthens communities and supports thoughtful discourse. By reclaiming the pace of reading, we reclaim the capacity for reflection, insight, and deeper understanding, both individually and collectively. Building a slow reading habit doesn't have to be complicated. Here's a practical 5-step routine you can start today to turn deliberate reading into a daily practice. First, choose the right environment. Find a quiet, comfortable space free from distractions. No phone notifications, no TV, no multitasking. The goal is to give your full attention to the page. Second, set a manageable time block. Even 15 to 30 minutes of focused reading is enough to make a difference. Consistency matters more than duration. Regular short sessions train your brain to stay engaged. Third, read actively. Take notes, highlight passages, ask yourself questions about the material, and pause to reflect on ideas or connections. This transforms reading from passive absorption into active learning. Fourth, visualize and imagine. Picture the scenes, characters, or concepts in your mind. Let your brain simulate experiences and emotions, which strengthen comprehension and memory. Fifth, integrate reflection. After finishing a chapter or section, pause to summarize what you've learned. Consider how it applies to your life, or discuss it with someone else. Over time, these steps turn slow reading into a powerful cognitive workout that enhances focus, understanding, and critical thinking. It's natural to wonder whether slow reading is practical in today's fast-paced world, and it's worth addressing the common objections honestly. Some people worry that reading slowly takes too much time, especially when there's a backlog of books, work emails, or news to catch up on. That's true, slow reading isn't always the most efficient way to get through a large volume of material. Its strength lies in depth, not speed. Others question whether the benefits are significant enough to justify the effort. While skimming or speed reading can give you the gist of a text, research shows that slow, deliberate reading builds stronger memory, improves critical thinking, and enhances empathy. However, it's important to recognize that these gains accumulate over time and with consistent practice. You won't see dramatic results from a single session. Finally, some people feel slow reading might be boring or frustrating, especially if they're used to digital multitasking. That's where selecting engaging material, setting manageable time blocks, and creating a focused reading environment becomes critical. Slow reading isn't a magic shortcut. It's a skill that requires patience, discipline, and deliberate attention. But for those willing to commit, the cognitive and emotional rewards are real and lasting. In summary, slow reading is more than a nostalgic habit. It's a scientifically backed tool to strengthen your brain, improve memory, boost critical thinking, and even enhance empathy. By resisting the rush and engaging deeply with text, you give your mind the chance to form stronger neural connections, integrate new knowledge, and make smarter, more reflective decisions in everyday life. While it may not be the fastest way to consume information, its long-term benefits for cognitive health and meaningful understanding are undeniable. Our takeaway? Start small, practice consistently, and prioritize depth over speed. Even a few focused minutes a day can gradually rewire your brain for sharper thinking and richer comprehension. If you found this guide useful, hit subscribe to get weekly insights and strategies that turn big ideas into daily actions. Comment below, how do you plan to slow down your reading this week, and which book will you start with? Don't forget to check out our other videos for more ways to boost your focus, memory, and personal growth.